I'm gonna be super candid a little bit just because I think that in this past year, with all that's happened, we've really gotten to kind of reflect. And I've gotten to figure out too how I can move forward intentionally as an Asian American actor.
Mm,
Um, and also realize the personal growth that I had to do as a person before feeling up to the responsibility of that,
mm,
and where I became complicit as an actor in the theater world, because I think that I had internalized, and I didn't even realize it until maybe like, I don't know, I internalized that success was making everybody think that I was white, is
mm,
making everybody forget that I was Asian. So if I could go into any audition room, any workspace, any rehearsal or anything, and people would forget that I was Asian, then that was a success. And often that, and it was different for all Asian shows, but like that was often when that's really how I excelled and
yeah,
made my way.
yeah.
And that's really because the industry, it's archaic in that like the stories were written by and for written for to be watched by, and like written to be performed by not people that look like us, right? But it was something that I never felt burdened by. I was like, I'm gonna be the Asian girl that plays all the white characters, and I never
Mm,
thought of it. I don't know. So I think that with Mean Girls, especially, I was one of the last people. I would think I was the last person cast in it. And again, for different reasons, mostly because I hadn't been able to be seen for a comedy for years after The King and I, or for a year after
mm,
King and I.
mm,
And the shows I had done before them were much more classic musical theater. So I, again, even though I was fighting so hard not to pigeonhole myself, I had pigeonholed myself, you
mm,
know? And
mm,
so I never even considered that. I was so excited that Mean Girls was happening because it's my favorite movie, and some of my friends were in it. But it feels very predestined in a certain way, or like fate, because I would have never guessed it for myself, and I had to be open to it. I was so happy that with the character that we built, with the Gretchen that we built, it felt like every person related to her, and that especially a lot of young Asian Americans like could see themselves in her. But it was more important for me as an actor, selfishly, that every person related
mm,
to her. And it
mm,
wasn't just a voice for people who looked like me. But what I realized when as I left the show, and now especially, is I was like, having a character like Mindy in a Darren Star show, and when we grew up on Friends and Sex in the City and all white cast, all white cast, all white cast, right? And I really, I never thought about it. I was like, oh, great, like I want to be like all these people,
mm,
and I didn't missing myself because I was just trying to think forward and think positively, and like, how can I be like these people? And
yeah.
so when I think about if I was younger, especially, and saw someone like me on this as a plastic on the Mean Girls poster or in a Darren Star show, I don't even know what it would have meant for me. But I hope that, I think the trap that we fall into is, my big hope was that when little Asian girls see the Mean Girls poster, they're not just like, oh great, that's an Asian role I can play, I'm going to go for Gretchen Wieners. Like, I think that's the trap that we're falling into too, is that I grew up being like, oh, maybe I could play the best friend. I could play the villain. I could play all these things, but I can never play the protagonist. And I hope that people, when they see those things, are like, oh, that means I can play any part in that show or
Mm,
any part in any other show. And so I realized that for so long, my goal was to, again, erase the Asianness and make people
mm,
forget. And now it's about making sure my Asianness is part of the narrative,
mm.
and like they're seeing the person that I am, whether they're seeing the vulnerable, they're seeing everything that I wanted them to see of the character, but also in your like also showing them that I'm Asian.